Hi, Algebra 2. Today's topic has 3 learning targets. Our first one is I can identify the zeros of a function presented algebraically or graphically, and we're going to be focused more on the graphically part for tonight's notes, and we'll finish up the algebraically part on the next night. The number 2 learning target is making sure you understand and remember that our solutions of our equation are zeros or x-intercept factors. And we touched on this last notes and last unit, so this one we are getting pretty good at. Our third one is when you're given the equation, I can determine the number of real solutions and non-real solutions. So that one we'll be working on tonight. And right away, there's a question for us to answer, and it says, how do you find roots, relative maximum, minimums, and zeros? And the first thing is you're going to be finding roots by realizing what we learned in class last time, that the total roots is equal to the degree. Okay, so that definition is the first thing. Now, when you're finding relative maximum, minimums, and zeros, you're going to be using the steps here on page 3 of the notes to help you. The zero steps you already know, but those are laid out there for you in case you forgot over the break. And then you're going to be learning tonight the maximum and minimums. And I will walk those through in this example, but those calculator steps that you have on page 3, feel free to use them. And this is what I mean by page 3. It's in your notes, and just turn to that if you get stuck. So when you're watching me do these steps, you do not need to write all the steps down. You have that there to reference as you're practicing in class and in the notes tonight. Okay, so we're just back on the notes now. I'm just going to write to answer the second part of this question, I'm going to use the calculator to find my real roots and zeros and maximum. So our zeros, remember those are our x-intercepts, and our relative maximum and our minimums. Okay, so our first example, right away into a problem tonight. Our degree, remember, is our highest exponent of our variable. In this case, our variable is x, so our highest degree here, our highest exponent is 4. So our degree for example number 1 is 4. Now, to answer the total number of roots, that just equals a degree. So our degree is 4, so our total roots would be the same number 4. Okay, now going back to last class and our notes, the type of function when the degree is a 4 is called a quartic. And you can think of the word quarter. That's the root quarter, quartic. Okay. Our leading coefficient, remember that is the number in front of the highest degree term. Our highest degree term again is the x to the 4th, and it turns out the number in front of x to the 4th is a 4. So it's just coincidence that this is also a 4. Okay, our M behavior, we can determine from the equation already and what we learned in our discovery activity in class today. So we know it's an even M behavior because the degree is even, and we know our A, so our degree is even, and our A is a positive number. It's greater than 0. So we have even, degree, 4 is even, and our leading coefficient for is a positive, so our a is greater than 0, so our leading coefficient is positive. And remember that LC stands for leading coefficient. Okay. Since our leading coefficient is positive, remember we can think of our parabola, and we can think of the fact that it's even, and it's positive, it's going to be touchdown. So it could be 2 turning points, 3 turning points, and look like a W. But both ends will be going up. So our end behavior, as x approaches negative infinity, the function is going to infinity, and as x goes to positive infinity, the function goes to positive infinity. So you can write this down in words or with the symbols, whatever makes the most sense to you. And remember, end behavior again is talking about the ends of the graph. So both of our ends of the graph are doing the same thing when it's even, and in this case, they're both going up because it's a positive leading coefficient. So they're both going up to positive infinity. Okay, so we know a lot of things before we even use the calculator. Now we're going to type this into the calculator and find our real roots and our maximums and minimums. So go ahead and pull out your calculator and type this in, and I will pull mine up as well. Okay, when you put in your y equals equation, remember you're putting this entire polynomial in, and 4x to the 4th minus 20x squared plus 16. Okay, so once you put that in, remember you hit graph to see the graph, and it does look like a W. Our roots are the x-intercepts, and there would be a total of 4 if they're all real. Here we do have 4. So we're going to find all 4 of these. To find them, remember we hit second trace, and once the calculate comes up, you hit number 2 for 0. And then it asks you a question left bound. Remember, you're bringing your cursor to the left of the, and we always analyze from left to right. So for this 0, left to right will be, left will be up here and right will be down there. So it's at the cursor is at the left, so we hit enter. And then we move the cursor to the right and hit enter. And then we guess by moving it close to the spot, or as close as it allows us to, and hit enter. So this 0 is at -2, 0. So we'll write that down as one of our zeros. And we'll write that down here on our notes. And we saw that all 4 are real, so we're going to write that number 4. That with the calculator we can see that all are real. Now we're going to calculate the other 3, so I have to find this one, and this one. So I just walk through those same steps until I find them all. So second, calculate, and 0 again. And then for this one, remember the graph goes left to right, so left bound for this one would be below the 0, so the cursor's already there below it. Then we'll hit enter, and then for right bound we'll have to move past the 0, and then this would be right bound, and then hit enter. And then guess on the 0 as close as you can and hit enter. And this 0 is -1, 0. So then we'll write that down, and I want you to pause the video after you write that down and then find these 2 as well. It looks like these might all be integers. So remember the second way to find it. If they are integers, you'll see them in the table. So go ahead and try, if you need to practice the calculator steps, try that, or just look for the other 2 zeros in the table and bring it back. So we found that the 4 roots were -2, 0, -1, 1, and 2. And you can see that, again, if they're integers, right in the table. If they're not an integer, then you have to use the calculator steps. and you would use 2 decimal places when you're writing them down if they're not an integer. Okay, the next part they want us to find are the relative maximum and minimums, and I believe I've shown you this, but just in case over the break you forgot or I haven't shown you this, when we're going to find the relative max and mins the same way using the calculator, and it will hit second and trace,